some people mention Andrew Tate as well.
Yeah.
That they are a good influencer and stuff. That's a debate. I understand he's a very controversial figure. He's done a few illegal things, but would you say Andrew Tate has some positive imaging for young men today, or do you think he has negative imaging for young men? What do you think from a teacher as an outside perspective?
What I noticed from when I was working in schools is that the young people hadn't had enough life experience to understand even what he's talking about. So he was more of a comedian.
The following is a conversation with Mr. T. Mr. T is a teacher based in London at a time when headlines are increasingly focused on the challenges facing young people, from disengagement in education to wider social pressures. His perspective feels especially relevant. Through his work in the classroom as well as working on his growing YouTube and social media platforms, Mr. T offers valuable insights into the realities young people are navigating today. He explores not only the root causes of disengagement, but also practical and meaningful ways we can better connect with students and create an education system that truly supports them. To support our channel, please like and subscribe and check out our sponsors in the description. And now, this is us getting a second opinion from Mr. T. Hello, Mr. T.
Hello.
Thank you for coming on our podcast today. I actually found you. So Dr. Dev, he's a doctor, and he does a lot of videos on the BMA and currently on prioritization bill. And I saw you did a video with him about asking his experiences with schools and teachers and his favorite teacher. So I wanted to start today with, who is your favorite teacher?
Who's my favorite teacher?
Your favorite teacher.
Wow. So I didn't actually expect you to ask that. When I was in primary school, so I have two favorite teachers. Yeah, there's more, and obviously there's teachers that I can shout out, but the two that stood out to me is a primary school teacher. Right, her name was Mrs. Boynton, I believe. Miss Boynton or Mrs. Boynton. Yeah, and then in secondary school there was a guy called Mr. Parker.
Mr. Parker.
Yeah.
Why do you like Miss Boynton then?
So Miss Boynton, I feel like she really understood me. You know, she made me feel like I was worthy as a person, if that makes any sense. So I remember specifically one time, well, I had to do the 11 plus, right? So I had to do these exams. There was a lot of pressure, you know, African household, you know, you're going to go to grammar school. And I passed it, I smashed it. And I think the day after I got my results, she wasn't teaching me anymore, but she must have just come up to me and just said like, my star.
Wow.
You know? And I don't even know if it's the words. I think it's just the body language, the warmth that she sort of saw me with. And yeah, she was just special.
That's
yeah,
nice.
She was unbelievable.
We all have those teachers
that
just make us feel a bit special. So my favourite teacher is Mr. Morland.
Okay.
And shout out Mr. Morland.
Yeah.
I've actually met him after. So Mr. Morland, he was my secondary school teacher. I remember at school there was this kid who was bullying me, or I used to get in fights with a lot, and it was actually very upsetting for me. And he was my form tutor. And I went to Mr. Morland after a week or so, and I said, I'm not having a good experience. But just the way he spoke to me, he listened to me. I think I went to him in my lunch break. The way he listened to me, took care, addressed the issue with the head teacher, went straight to the head teacher, arranged a meeting, and it did gradually get resolved. And kind of like you with Miss Boynton, she went a bit extra, just said, you're my star, because she'd been thinking of you. Mr. Morley was always there, so I wanted to go to med school, and I would always ask for little bits of advice, and it wasn't difficult to talk to him. He was just there, very calm and gentle. And I think we all maybe have some negative images of school, but we all have that one or two teachers that just make it a special time.
Yeah, no, 100%.
And I met Mr. Morland after. So I met him in Sheffield, went to Sheffield Medical School, met him after, we went for coffee, and he said, call me Nathan. I said, I can't call you Nathan.
I know about
I just
that.
can't. It's
I know
just,
about that.
it has to be Mr. Morland. I have too much respect. I will see you in that way. And also, he's like 6'6". He's very tall.
Yeah,
so for me, he still looks like my teacher as well. But we all have that person in our lives, in our school. No, so that was good that you shared that.
Thank you.
So what I wanted to talk about today was your YouTube channel is very interesting. How you speak to young people, how you seem very relatable. I think you did a Times Radio interview about interview you did on the road, in London. So the interviews were interviewing people and you did in Tottenham, Brixton, Peckham, Hackney, and Lewisham.
Yes.
You asked 3 very interesting questions. The first one was, who are the influencers for the young generation today? Are GCSEs important? And do you feel safe and supported in the communities you live in? So let's break that down.
Cool.
I'll ask an open question. So why did you ask those 3 questions?
So the reason I asked those 3 questions, I felt like those were some of the most relevant things of the time. So when I was substitute teaching in certain schools, basically, I would notice that guest speakers would come in to assembly, right? And the students just had no interest whatsoever. So I was just thinking to myself, what kind of person would it take to come into a school whereby all the students would listen? And that's what sort of sprung the main question, which was, if you could invite someone famous or celebrity or just anyone to school to do an assembly, who would you invite? Because I wanted them to sort of visualize, I just wanted them to visualize that person actually being in their school doing the assembly, rather than asking them, oh, who are they influenced by? I didn't feel like that was a digestible, relatable enough question. And then, I think the next thing in terms of are GCSEs important was, there's obviously like a rhetoric, or there's different camps. There's camps that GCSEs are not important, and there's camps where it's like GCSEs are very important. So I wanted to actually see, what do the young people think? And I sort of expected them to not really be that much fond of GCSEs. And then lastly, do you feel safe in this area? So obviously the areas that I was in, some of them had certain reputations for being dangerous. And I remember I was at Nando's with my friend, and he said he wouldn't go to London, or he wouldn't go to Peckham or something like that, to go for like a meal or something in the evening or whatever. And I was just thinking, wow, there's young people that genuinely live in those communities. They go to and from school. You know, they have to walk into the estate late at night. And I was just thinking, I wonder how they feel. You know, if there's some people that are saying they wouldn't go to London, and online as well, in some of my TikTok comments, people were saying that, I wanted to know how they would feel. So that's what sort of formed
those questions.
Yeah.
Could we break it down then?
Let's break it down, yeah.
Let's go with the last one. Do you feel safe and supported in the community you live in? You said you've yourself grown up in London and Kent, and also have taught in these areas. Can you give people who are listening today how it is for a young person to grow up in those areas? Could you give a bit of insight?
I think growing up in those areas depends on a lot of different things. I mean, this is a serious question, and I think that it is. I will have to generalize, even though it's not maybe the case for everyone.
Yeah.
But I feel like it can be difficult. Yeah, there's a lot going on. I feel like in school, for me, because I was able to relate to the students, I saw a lot of them having fun. And I feel like a lot of them do know how to have fun. That's the good thing about these communities. They know how to have fun. They know how to entertain themselves. But maybe outside of school, it could be different. The home life might be different. Some students have sort of told me about certain situations that they're in, parents having cancer, this and that going on. And yeah, the reality is, yeah. I mean, I remember one time I was on Instagram and I saw a missing child poster, and it was a student that I used to teach. And I was just like, man, it's probably quite evident that he was just somewhere selling drugs. And I was just thinking, wow, but that's the reality, you know? And I was cruising through a couple years later. I was on a bus and I must have seen another one of my students. I would have seen them selling drugs. Like, I'm sure they might have thought it was low key, but I knew what was going on. But I wasn't working at the school or anything at the time. And yeah, it just sort of hit me the reality of the different paths that some of them choose to go down. But
for me, I work as an A&E doctor, as A&E junior doctor, and you are taught about the environmental factors that many people face. It's not just the medicine and knowledge of diseases, but you know, I always think every time I turn up to my job, when I see a patient, I think of the medicine, but then you realize there's actually a lot of environmental factors, social factors, home factors that actually play into making a decision. So as simple as, let's say someone's coming with gout, so that's a swelling of one of your joints, increase of crystals in that joint. So then you give a medication for that. And for me, it's just simple. I just write a prescription pad, I give it to someone. And maybe for someone from a middle to upper class background, easy, go to the pharmacy and you regularly take the medication. But then I know for other people, it can be challenging. A homeless person, how would they go about paying for that prescription or finding a pharmacy or registering for a pharmacy? And then let's say if it's a week course and they have to take that medication 3 times a day on a regular basis, having the time to sit down to take that medication, or let's say if there's a busy parent with many kids and they are working 1 or 2 jobs, finding the time to take that medication. And if they don't take it, then their complications will grow and then it becomes medically more complex. So I always have to correct myself when I turn up to see my patients, because I'm not just there to just give medical advice and leave them, but then I have to maybe consider those other things. And probably, let's say yourself, when you turn up to school to teach, you think I'm just here to deliver my lesson on English or maths or whatever. But then you have to think about actually the children you're teaching, they've got something else on the back of their mind. Maybe they're being disruptive, but maybe at home, as you say, parents got cancer or there's gang culture or knife culture that's on their doorstep. And maybe education is not the biggest thing or not quite the priority, or they're not quite listening to you. So when you talked about that sounded interesting. So would you say in those areas then that, because a lot of those kids on your YouTube videos, they did say, well, some of them said, no, I don't actually feel safe where I live right now. And you put some clips of some knife crimes or some stabbings or some people have died just recently, and they'll say, that's at the end of my street. Do you think that puts kids off, or they just don't maybe prioritize education, maybe to, let's say, how you and I maybe have thought of education?
So I think, so the trend that I sort of noticed was a lot of the boys kind of said they feel safe. I do wonder about that answer. A lot of the girls said they didn't feel safe. I think that to focus on education, I feel like that's almost like a long-term thing, right? When there's students that are thinking about making it day to day. So from someone from a background that's, let's just say, more privileged, they can think about, okay, what GCSEs are they going to get in year 11 when they're 15, 16? And what's that going to lead them to take at A-levels? And then what university am I going to go to so that I can have a stable career at 30? But maybe a student in the classroom is thinking, wow, I need to find money for my mum to pay rent this week. Do you know what I mean? So, I think it all just depends on the student. But I guess there's financial factors, that could be more important to them. There could be safety factors if they've gone down a certain path. It could be health for themselves or for their family members around them. So, yeah.
Interesting. Because later I will be asking about, what changes you want in the education system. But I actually think sometimes education is probably a product of all these other issues that are going on with the kids. So that's interesting. So then going on to that, you said education maybe is a long distance thing for them. You asked, are GCSEs important? Why do you have these two camps where some kids say it is important to them and then some saying it's not important? What did you learn from that?
Yeah, so I think ultimately there's a batch of students that have seen people who haven't gotten good GCSEs able to sustain a lifestyle that they would like. And then there's a batch of students that have influences in their life where they stress the importance of GCSEs. And I mean, it's something that's drilled into them every day. So I think some of them, even just in school, the teacher's telling them, look, this is important. You need to get your GCSEs. You need to pass maths and English. Otherwise, you're going to struggle. I think that is enough. I thought there was going to be a lot more GCSEs aren't important, just based on some of the behaviour that I've seen. But yeah, I think a lot of them do think GCSEs are important, and a lot of them do get upset when they fail a test.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Fine. So they do see it as important. I think I found that interesting. You met my mum earlier. She also worked as like a form tutor type person, and would say a lot of kids are not engaged in a lesson. But then when listening to your videos, some of them did say, actually, yeah, it's important. So then another part of my brain's thinking, so then why they're not engaging with school, why they're not listening or revising or doing their homework and stuff. So then those kids who say they think it's important, why do you think they're saying that? Is it because maybe they've seen the odd few people have done well when they didn't need GCSEs? Is it because they just don't enjoy school? So for that camp, why do you think people don't think it's important?
You know what? I didn't necessarily think GCSEs were that important either, right? And I've kind of changed my thinking as I've gotten older. But I think when I was younger, ultimately I thought GCSEs were to get a good job, and I wasn't necessarily interested in that, if I'm being honest. I don't know if my brain works in a certain way, but I do like to be a bit free than a bit controlling. So I think some people think they could be an influencer, they could start their own business, and they haven't quite maybe done the necessary research, or there's people who haven't presented it in a crystal clear way as to why this could be directly important for the path that you're going down. So I think it's just a case of, if they don't find it important, they might have visualized their future, and from what they've been told or what they've researched, this isn't going to help them get to where they want to get to in their future. That's what I'd probably say.
It's like, for me, I don't think I can relate with a lot of the things that maybe the kids that you spoke to about gang culture and knife culture and drugs. That's not part of my upbringing. But I mean, I did have somewhat of a challenging upbringing.
Right.
And the way that I saw education was, it's a social mobilizer, that regardless of where I'm from, but like, for example, if you want to be a professional footballer, I actually did at some point, and you can do all the exercises and effort and stuff, but there's a little bit of a luck element at the end of the day, because it's a scout who watches you, and if they like you, great. If they don't like you, not. And it depends on if you're playing a good team. I was a centre back at the time. I had a few scouts come and they said, the strikers on the other team, they weren't as challenging, so it's hard to assess you. So there's a luck thing, let's say, with football.
Yes.
But let's say for many educational pathways, I'm going to say doctor, lawyer, or whatever, if you do the hard work, then you will achieve the grades. Like, if you do sit down and revise and stuff. And that's what I just thought in my head. So regardless if I wanted to be a doctor or whatever, I thought if I got these grades, then it opens up avenues for I can pick various careers. But if I had not done well, then I am now limited. That was just my mindset. So that's why maybe I just like to know more for those kids who said, no, GCSEs are not important, I guess, do they not see it in that kind of way? And maybe you said yourself you didn't quite see it. So why do some kids not see it as important?
Do you know what? The first thing that comes to mind, right, is there was either misinformation or information that isn't in context.
Okay.
So these, let's say, billionaires, you know, there's like notorious, oh, this person dropped out of college, this person dropped out of college. And it's like, oh, yeah, like use your time better to create something that can make you a millionaire or a billionaire. But what I didn't know at the time was they would have smashed the equivalent of GCSEs. They went to an Ivy League college. Their network was unbelievable. And they dropped out after being in the most prestigious academic position. Yeah? So that picture isn't painted. And they just see it as, oh, like it could be a waste of time. I think also when you look at the stats, I believe the most underperforming group is like white travelers, right? So it's just family members that are living, making money, you know, doing carpentry, woodwork, you know, roofing, stuff like that, fixing kitchens and stuff like that. So they're just thinking, I don't need this.
I can just do what they do.
Yeah, I can just go under my dad's wing and just get to work.
Really?
Yeah.
You think a lot of young people see it like that then?
Yeah, I think in certain communities they see older people that are living in a comfortable way and they haven't got good GCSEs. But what they might not know obviously is that it is important to have the GCSEs if you want a normal job, like even just a C in maths and English. I don't think that's broken down as clearly to them. And maybe the influences in school are saying you need it to get a normal job, but maybe someone at home didn't need it, but they might not know that things have changed since when they was in school. So that's probably what I'd say. Yeah.
So then I want to move on to the first question, which is, who are the influences for the young generation today? I think quite a few of the young people actually struggle to answer that as a question. Do you think we're facing a generational crisis with young people where they feel a bit antisocial or dissocial, engaged in society? Do you think that's going on?
Okay, I'm gonna answer the question based on what I saw from the answers, and then I'll try and tie it in. When I was asking the questions, a lot of them, their influencers or the people that came to their mind first and foremost were celebrities and influencers, yeah? And then I would follow up that question with, can they name me any good role models? And in the public eye, they really struggled to do that. But there were a couple answers here and there where people might say like their mum or their teacher, which was nice. And so I think you're asking about weaving into society. It's like, I guess it's an identity thing of who do they want to be in society? Who can they look up to and want to be like? So yeah, there's a lot of judgment in terms of the different paths that young people might want to take, and they kind of just have to figure out what's most suited to their truth. Yeah.
So let's talk about the local level for role models. You mentioned earlier that some people say teachers and parents or some aunts or uncles, they see them as role models, which is really good. And or even just people from working backgrounds and their parents are carpenters and plumbers and handymen people, let's say. Would you say maybe those young people, because they don't have role models or influencers who are from, I'm going to say, slightly more educated backgrounds, they don't have that insight or understanding of what more of a lifestyle they could achieve? Would you say maybe that's potentially a challenge for young people, that they don't have influences in that sort of way?
Yeah, so some of them don't have influences from an academic or an educational background, right? That isn't necessarily a bad thing. Okay. Obviously, being more educated broadens the options that they have in life. And then, unfortunately, there are some students that, I mean, this could even be like a healthy debate. Is everyone able to excel in education based on certain special educational needs, ADHD, autism. There's different things, and there's different challenges that young people have to face as well, which can hinder them prioritizing education. So yeah, I mean, it could be seen as a problem from a generic standpoint in terms of the breadth of options that they have. But then some people, they might not be as academically gifted. Yeah.
Interesting. And you not just interviewed young people, you interviewed parents as well who live in these areas.
Yeah.
Some of the parents were concerned of the big influences such as rappers and social media influencers for these young people. Would you say, I mean, you're a teacher, do you think you're concerned that maybe some of these young people, they look up to these type figures as their role models and aspirations? Is that a good or bad thing?
I think it's good and bad.
Okay.
Yeah, it's good and bad.
Okay.
I think these are people who've done something. They've done something with their life. They've carved their own sort of path, and they're seeing some form of success, whether it be long term or not. Depending on how the young person decides to internalize their message can determine whether it's good or bad. I think on the whole, they are influential from what I've seen, and it can be a negative thing, but I could never really slate someone that's come from a difficult circumstance and found a way to live
Interesting. So some of the comments that the parents have said was, let's talk about rappers, that they talk about money, they talk about maybe seeing women as objects or a goal. Some of them say they openly talk about gang culture, they openly talk about stabbings and knife culture. Now, there's one argument to say that we shouldn't be talking about that because now you're exposing young people to it. Another thing is, and we talked about earlier, that actually these young people, they're probably facing that on a regular basis. And now we're having a formalized discussion and actually progressing the debate. So we're not negating it. It happens. So in terms of the good and bad influences on those respects, what would you say to parents about, let's say, rap culture? Is it a good or bad influences that these musicians are talking about these topics?
My immediate thought is that it leans towards the negative. It leans towards the negative. People might argue that those people are doing what they can to legitimize income through music so that they can avoid that kind of lifestyle. I mean, if I'm even being honest, like when I was younger, I used to listen to like rap music, and it did influence me. I didn't do anything crazy, but in terms of like the way I dressed or like the sort of swagger that I had, it was influential.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I think a lot of drill artists, they might say that it doesn't influence knife crime. I don't know if it does or not, but I do feel like if you're listening to certain music and you're inspired by it, it can make it easier for you if that song's in your head, like those sort of actions. But I do feel like drill music, for example, or rap is not as popular anymore. Like, it used to be a lot more popular before. And apparently knife crime is going down. I'm not sure if that's the case.
I think it is.
But I believe it is. I haven't heard a lot in recent times. So I don't know if that's linked to drill or not, but
fair enough then.
Yeah,
fair enough. I think young people, they like to dress like their role models and idols and stuff, and I think that's perfectly fine. Some would say because they are talking about money, then actually that is aspirational to want to get a job and stuff. But then they talk about gang culture and knife culture. Are we not encouraging it, but are now people talking about it? Is it scary allowing young people to talk about it because they go to school and they mention it to their mates like, oh, so-and-so had this song, what do you think about it and stuff? That was just the question that I had, which is it a good or bad influence at the end of the day? Some people mention Andrew Tate as well.
Yeah.
That they are a good influencer and stuff. That's a debate. I understand he's a very controversial figure. He's done a few illegal things, but would you say Andrew Tate has some positive imaging for young men today, or do you think he has negative imaging for young men? What do you think from a teacher's and outside perspective?
All right, cool. This is obviously a very controversial thing. So, do you know what? Obviously, at the time, so I was in schools at his peak. Yeah. And I'll be honest, it's a challenging one to discuss because the level of triggering that he's pent up within people, I don't know if people are able to look at it in a rational way. But I'll talk about from what I saw, right? And I'm happy to be probed, yeah? What I noticed from when I was working in schools is that the young people hadn't had enough life experience to understand even what he's talking about. So he was more of a comedian. From my experience, they would probably just say like, I'll be like, or if they're talking about him, they might just say like a slogan of his, like, oh, I'll be like, okay, so why'd you like him? Because he's a top G. And it didn't really go much deeper than that. I didn't see any extremely negative behavior. And I'm not saying that he's ultimately positive or incredibly negative, but just from what I saw and my subtle tapping on situations, that's what I saw. Maybe other teachers might have a different experience where it was completely negative. But yeah.
Do you think what young people had listened to maybe in TikToks and short formats was positive in the sense it's promoting independence or looking after yourself? That part was okay. Is that what you're roughly saying?
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to nail it, but I think for the most part, it was more so entertaining. Possibly the older people got, the more they digested it and they were like, oh yeah, let me go to the gym, let me start a business, blah, blah, blah. In terms of the relational aspect, I don't know how that affected different people, but yeah.
So you think it was more meme-like or joke-like, that actually he was there saying very catchy things that are not necessarily relatable, but just catchy, funny things that young people would like. Do you think maybe the negative connotations, such as how he treats or talk about women and women's role in the household, and you think that kind of stuff didn't catch on with young people, which is rather the catchy, funny, and maybe some positiveness of starting a business and going to the gym? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, like I didn't notice the negative impacts on the relational side.
Okay.
Whether it was there or not, and that might just be based on the lack of experience. Like they're young, so I guess when you're young, you want to have money and you want to look good.
Yeah.
Like when you're a young boy.
And that's all that you think they took from it, rather than negative sides. That's your experience from.
Yeah, and I feel like he's irrelevant right now. Like I don't hear students saying any of the
thing that
he's not as relevant in their lives right now.
No, I think maybe a year or two ago he's on a lot of podcasts.
Yeah.
And maybe repeating this slogans. I think he had a recent boxing match a few months ago or something. But since then, I agree with you. He's not in the debate or people are talking about him. Yeah. It's probably been like a year or so since he's been on the Piers Morgan show. But fine. Okay. That was just a concern that maybe not young men, but other people. So let's say parents and women are men getting badly influenced by Andrew Tate and some of these toxic figures, and then that's translating into normal life. But you would say in general, not
from what I saw, So some would argue that he has. I don't know if they've been able to tie it directly.
Yeah,
but from what I saw,
okay, well that's good to hear. To be honest, that there's sensible people. It's like comes back to the point earlier when I said, are GCSEs important? We expected young people probably to say, no, they're not important. But there were some who were. So maybe we do worry in society that, the young people are getting badly influenced. But actually, they probably do have a little bit of a sensible mind as well. And maybe you should be putting trust in young people and making right decisions for them. So that's good to hear. That's good to hear. I wouldn't have brought you on if I didn't think you were interesting, Mr. T.
Yeah.
So talk about yourself. What got you to become a teacher? Tell us that journey.
As a young man, you want to be rich, right?
Yeah.
You want to be rich as a young man. So I was more into like business, investing, this, that, which is fine, right? But there were some key principles that I did learn from that, in the sense of buy low, sell high. And so I've always been a person that's more on the positive impact. And there was a slogan that I learned from certain networking events that I'd been to, where it's about impact over income. And I sort of noticed that if you impact someone young, that can go on to bear fruit in the future in a very real way. So that's what sort of made me lean towards the most impact. Right, I sort of prioritized it in the form of the most impact. And so, yeah, during COVID, I was working in a test center and I was loving it there because barely anyone was coming in, still getting paid. And then schools were reopening and they said, look, we've randomly selected people to go to schools. You need to do 100 to 200 tests a day. When I was doing 8 to 9 tests a day, was playing pool in the local, I don't know, it was a local thing, and there was just, where people came in to get them. I was like, well, I guess all good things come to an end. So I've gone to this school, and even during the testing of the students, the senior team could see that I was relating with them well. They felt comfortable doing the tests, etc. And after, I sort of just asked them, like, how can I work here? And they were like, yeah, there's an agency. We can get you signed up and you could start as a teaching assistant and we'll see how that goes. And rest was history.
Then it went from there.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Because teaching, you would think, is completely different to maybe how you would initially saw the world, money and success, because it's giving back to people. It's a public servant type job.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how that one moment or that one experience not flipped your mind, but just caught that inside of you to help other young people.
Yeah, and also another thing was I think this mindset sometimes limits me, but because I'm from like a psychology background, in the sense of in school, love psychology, uni, I study psychology along with sports. In terms of brain development, I still wanted to impact adults. That's sort of what I was thinking about, impacting adults, etc. But I did realise, I think there's a limit in terms of how much you can impact an adult. I think they're less impressionable. And so obviously with young people, they're more impressionable, there's more impact, but obviously there's a greater responsibility with that.
And you feel that because you can touch young people's minds and get their attention at school, you can have a bigger impression on them, a bigger impact.
Yeah.
That's what you felt.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay. You've done a few videos on like teaching styles and giving advice to maybe even future teachers on how to look after their students. There was a video you did, it was a clip from a BBC documentary, Excluded, Kicked Out of School. And you, the title of the video was How to Handle Difficult Black Male Students. And it was one clip where it was a teacher who probably didn't manage it very well. And then another outburst from a young student, but then he took a little bit of time or even stood up as well to that young student. I think the reason I like your videos is you do seem relatable on the road speaking to young people. So what advice or what teaching styles do you recommend to then seem relatable and then from there engaging with young people who are not actually that interested in school?
Yeah, very, very good question. So I think I'm not actually like a teacher in the sense of I don't have the qualifications and this and that. But one would argue I might have more experience with behavior management because I'm getting chucked into schools where I'm a new person that they can test. And so I think at the most fundamental level, teachers need to understand there's the academic part, but then there's like the social part and the fact that they're real humans. And I think what makes it a bit easier for me is I understand that, you know, even going back to why I got into teaching, I think about times when I'm with my friends and we're just with the secondary school friends, and all we can do is just laugh about school experiences. And this is 10, 15 years later. And so if you understand that what you're doing has decades of impact, then I think it can help a teacher to, I guess, contextualize the role that they're doing. So I think the teaching styles that are important to embed is more so, there's a nice cliche term. They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Yeah.
Wow.
So if they know you care about them, you're more likely going to get them to listen. They're more likely going to be relaxed. If they feel like you're stressed, you call them out on the negative, you never call them out on the positive. That's just not, even, you're a doctor, you know about the release of certain hormones and this and that. It doesn't put them in the best state to learn, even from like a chemical standpoint. They're not ready to take in the information that you have to tell to them. So, yeah.
Interesting. So, how do you go about that? Because for me, it's natural for you just to relate to people.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying it's not natural for some people, but how do you just come across as caring? Yeah. But then also you need to get on with the content. You need to teach these young people.
Yeah.
How do you give off that vibe? That's what makes you unique. That's why I reached out to you. So how do you appear as caring?
I think it's about the genuine intent. I think I smile a lot. I try to remember all their names. I ask them about stuff after school. Stuff that isn't to do with school. How was your football match on Sunday? What did you have for dinner last night? They can get on to me for my dinner. They'll be like, oh, that was rubbish dinner. Like, just stuff that isn't just about the interest of getting them the academics, which is obviously important, but what are their interests? What are their motivations, right? And then trying to present the lesson in a way that's engaging. Obviously, that can't always happen because there's a time and a place for boredom and just cracking on. But we're shortening attention spans. I think engaging lessons and accommodating to a range of learning styles is important.
And that's why, for me, I found Mr. Morland, he was my favourite teacher.
Yeah.
He actually listened to me. And he said, Miss Boynton actually listened to you. And when you achieved that success, called you my star, she was probably waiting for that moment. And that's what comes across today, in your teaching style and stuff. So would you say teachers currently these days, that is an issue they face? Do you think they're not trained well enough to engage with young people, have that long-term experiential journey of caring for them and knowing their challenges, and then from there catering the curriculum? Do you think that's an issue with the education system?
It's a whole thing in terms of the curriculum. Yeah, maybe more training if they're open to that though. I think there are a lot of meetings and trainings that they have to do.
Yeah.
If they're open to it, I do feel like possibly it could be to do with scouting the right talent.
Yes.
Scouting the right talent. I don't think teaching is a very attractive job, especially for, let's say, a young male. That doesn't dominate the demographic of teachers, because you're not really thinking about giving back. You're thinking about making money,
Yes.
your relationships, having a family, getting a mortgage, paying the rent, paying the bills, saving. So there's a guy I know called Chris Foley. He was in China. So he's a teacher. He's like the rap teacher guy. And he was saying how year 4 students were doing GCSE level questions, maths. And I know certain countries really invest into their teachers, and that's going to attract possibly a better quality of teacher. But I'm of maybe a stance that it's not about the money, it's about the impact. But that could be ignorant, because some people do have to like pay their bills, feed their kids. So I understand the strikes and them wanting that. But I do feel like if you really don't like young people, if you don't understand the impact that you're having, you shouldn't really be messing around with their development in that way. If you really don't like the industry, the profession, find another one.
I think there is a huge difference. You know, when you turn up to a lesson, I'm still a trainee doctor, so I still go to teaching myself. And I can tell the difference to when there's someone there teaching me and it is just to complete their portfolio. They have to do the lesson as a tick box, compared to someone who genuinely wants to teach me about their specialty or field and wants me to gain knowledge or take something away. And I think we all have the experiences from school where, you do maybe find a teacher who actually, they're just there to just teach the curriculum to then those who genuinely care for you. And I feel that makes a different experience for me. If I feel someone's caring in me, then, and maybe even slightly personalizing it, then I will be a bit more engaging. Or they're directly talking to me, or if I ask them a question, they are answering my question rather than just thinking, I've got an hour, I need to deliver this, teaching on off my cement or whatever. So, I completely hear you, and I'm sure every job is different. But let's say a teacher and a doctor, it is not just delivering the curriculum, me just diagnosing and treating, you just delivering your lesson. There is a bit of care that's needed. And I think a lot of teachers are well intentioned, but maybe that could be further developed in the education system. As you said, maybe recruiting the right people. And in terms of recruiting the right people, do you think it's pay that's an issue? Do you think it's maybe giving teachers enough time to prepare for lessons? Do you think, in your opinion, do you think teachers are overburdened with pressures that they have to do with teaching, marking exams and paperwork and stuff?
I think...
Or do you think it's down to recruitment?
I think scouting the right talent is very important. Yeah. But teachers are unbelievably overwhelmed with stuff. Like, unbelievably. And that's probably why I've sort of avoided that. Because my thing is the impact. I'm happy to deliver the lessons. If the school has a system in place to deliver the lessons, I'll deliver that to the best of my ability. But yeah, I'm not a fan of the admin and all this extra stuff that isn't directly related to the impact of the students.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And that's building up with time, that sort of admin type role.
Yeah.
We're burdening our teachers when they need to be we would like them to be focused on our young people who are going to shape the world.
Yeah.
Interesting.
One thing that I've also sort of thought about is there any negative impact of the level of understanding that I have for my students? Because I think it's important to be balanced. And you know how Isaac Newton has that theory? Every reaction has an equal and opposite reaction. So I sat down and thought, what is the negatives of me being so understanding towards my students? Because I thought it was important for me to tackle that. And what I came up with was, realistically, in the real world, a lot of people aren't going to have the level of patience that someone like me or a very understanding teacher has. So there is a place for teachers that are just, if I'm just devil's advocate arguing, there's a place for teachers that aren't as understanding, because you will get to a point in life where people aren't as understanding. And if they don't realise that, then it can hit them quite quite hard. Because I was visualizing a school where all the teachers were just understanding and
Caring.
yeah. But there is a place for the strict teacher. There is a place for, the teacher that might even, I completely disagree with this and I don't like teachers like this, but let's say they've got something bad going on at home, taking it out on children. That's kind of the reality of how life is, even though I completely don't agree with that. But yeah, I had to sort of challenge myself at some point.
That if you, not everyone is going to be caring to you all the time. You will, I've gone to work and sometimes I have a consultant who's very strict and stern, but then I get a consultant who is, let's say, more caring, understanding, and happy for me to explain why I think this and that about a patient. So you're saying actually young people probably need to get exposed to different kinds of people. That's what you're saying.
That's a hidden positive of teachers that aren't as understanding. Yeah.
So then in the world that maybe some people perceive that young people are disengaging with school, they don't see GCSEs important, do you think right now we've got the equilibrium right of, let's say, a strict teacher versus a caring teacher? Or do you think we need a bit more TLC in schools from our teachers? Yeah.
That's such a good question. Such a good question.
In your opinion, do you think we got the equilibrium right?
Some would say students are being too much cared for right now. And I might hear that argument if you look at the past society's going down. If you sort of look at generations and just the way people interact and manners, ethics, morals, character, maybe it's easing it up a bit too much. I don't know.
Because I would have thought, actually, are we getting too stern and not having as many caring teachers? And then as a result, people are not, young people are not enjoying school. But then I understand, are we coddling young people too much? That actually they're not tough enough to deal with challenges, or maybe life's too easy and they don't see that you actually have to work a little bit hard to achieve something good and right.
It's a fantastic debate and it's about balance, because just because a teacher's understanding and they go for a TLC approach, it doesn't mean that the child is getting worse grades or becoming a worse person. It could be argued that that does actually help improve their achievement. So it's hard to know.
Interesting.
Because it's almost qualitative data. It's not metrics and numbers. It's hard to measure.
I think it's fascinating that you mentioned it, because for this whole conversation, and maybe when I came in today, I was like, oh, we need more caring teachers. That's why I brought you on, because we don't have too many. But it's really insightful that you are a reflective thinker as well, and actually see the other points of view and the other need of it as well. I'm sure, yes, fair enough, I'm saying you're a caring teacher. I'm sure you have a balanced approach when you do teach, but it's fascinating to see that in a school, you probably need a mix of everyone at the end of the day. No, that's interesting. In terms of yourself, you've got a YouTube channel, Mr. T. You've got your Instagram. What is the message that you hope to come across in your videos and the different things that you've done? You've done meeting people in these areas. You've done guests, meeting previous teachers. And what is your general message that you like to come across with your social media platforms, with young people and parents and whoever's listening?
The positive impact of a teacher outlasts the duration of the classroom. Yeah, I'd say that. So what I'm really trying to focus on now is reconnecting celebrities with their favorite teacher from school, famous people, influencers, whatever, just because they have the ability to shine a light on what a good teacher looks like. And hopefully that can inspire current teachers, although based on my sort of philosophy, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But more new teachers coming in, a fresher approach, a fresher attraction into the education system of the impact that you can have if you are a teacher, and the fact that you might be teaching the next
celebrity, billionaire, millionaire.
Yeah. I have an episode coming up with they're calling him the next Anthony Joshua, the new Mike Tyson.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
he's called Moses Atalma.
Okay.
He's from Britain, and yeah, he's doing good things.
Wow.
So that's like the first.
Yeah.
I don't want to discredit the other people, but that's the first media, like a push of someone that I'm working with.
Interesting.
So yeah.
I've always known the impact of the words of a doctor. So let's say in a day in A&E, I could see anywhere from like 5 to 15 patients in a day. And for me, I just spend 15 minutes taking history, and then afterwards I do my work. But I know, and we all have our own experiences, that if you went to A&E and then went home, you'd be sitting down talking to your mum and dad and your partner or your kids or whatever about, here's what happened at A&E, and this is what the doctor said. So I know that for me it's just 15 minutes, but for the family it's having a family meeting about something I just said in 15 minutes. I think it's the same for teachers. You know, when you speak to a child, let's say at the end of a lesson, who says, I'm struggling on this subject, or I'm getting bullied, for you probably had a 10-15 minute good conversation. But for that child, he's having a family meeting, and the words that you said are extremely powerful. And for me, that gets me going every day. That's the care and attention and the humbleness I have when I approach my job. And you know, you said even though it is entertaining, yes, celebrities meeting their former teachers, but it's just knowing that teacher who maybe taught just a handful of lessons to that student, and then they've gone on to do great things, and after 10-20 plus years they still remember that conversation, which maybe you forgot as a teacher, but it's ingrained in their heads forever, and probably shaped who they are today. And it's fascinating that I feel that's a theme that you always have in your YouTube videos and social media, the positive impact of a teacher. And as you just said, we need better recruitment of teachers with good ethics and morals, and we'd like to see that young teachers coming in, and you're trying to have that influence. I think it's fascinating. Yeah. It's really good to hear. Yeah. 2 more questions.
Good.
If you were to meet your younger self,
yeah,
what advice would you give to younger Mr. T?
At what age do you reckon?
Let's say secondary school.
Just
before going into GCSEs, when things are maybe starting to get important in life, where you're maturing, not quite to a man, but you're nearly there. What advice do you have for your younger self?
Man, that's
a big question.
Yeah, it's a big question. It's a big question because I think the default answer now, the cool answer now, the regular answer now, is I wouldn't give myself any advice because I am who I am today, and if this didn't happen in the past, then I wouldn't be who I am today, which I agree with, of course. But I do want to try and think of an answer. Actually, here's what I'd say. Be more intentional about maintaining the positive relationships in your life. I think I'm not the best at maintaining relationships. I think a lot of the relationships in my life that are amazing have come from the other side of the person maintaining it. And there's a lot of people in secondary school that have gone on to do like good things, but I'm just not in touch with them. Yeah, be more intentional about maintaining the positive relationships in your life.
Why is that important to be intentional to maintain relationships? Why do you think that's important?
Right after health or a relationship with God, even you could argue that's a relationship. I think relationships are the cornerstone of the quality of someone's life. The happiness they have in life, the stress they face in life, the money they make in life, the opportunities they get in life are based on the relationships that they develop, maintain, water, nurture. You know, there was a study, there's a TEDx talk that they studied for happiness. I don't know if you've seen it, but the results just came that the people that had the best quality of life, it tracked back to the relationships that they have. And it was done over a very, very long time. I wish I could be more specific, but yeah, that did stick with me. Yeah.
And my final question, as a teacher, for a world that we live in today where maybe young people are disengaged in society or maybe not engaged in school, what advice do you have to those young people who feel a bit lost or lacking of hope of the future in their lives? What is your advice, Mr. T, for them?
First and foremost, that there is a lot of bad advice out there. So when you are taking advice on from people, assess whether the lifestyle they have, the type of person they are, is the type of person that you'd want to embody. That's what I'd say. And obviously there's good advice from good people that you might want to emulate and be like. And then secondly, I'd say everyone is unique. I believe everyone has a gift. It's easy to be a sheep, but if you find a way to stay true to yourself and identify what's unique about you, that you enjoy, that helps other people, that doesn't cause negativity in the life of other people, pursue that, because that will give you the greatest quality of life that you can sort of imagine for.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
My mum, she's told me two things. There's two people you mostly respect in life, and that's doctors and that's teachers. The reason my mum says for teachers is they are the social mobilizers of this world. If you want to achieve more, you need to have the support of your teacher. The words that they say are golden. They will help you in your challenges. They'll help you grow up to be better men and women in society and achieve your dreams at the end of the day. I remember one time I came back from school, it was primary school. One of my favorite teachers, it was Mr. Houtoff. I feel very bad that I did this, but he said something and I tutted. And he told me off and I went back home. And I told my mum. She was very, very angry because my mum does not like me disrespecting teachers. I'm normally a fairly well-behaved person, but I did that. Yeah. And my mum said, the day after, you're going to go to him and you're going to apologize. And I did, and I apologized and stuff. And that's how high regard I have for teachers. I've enjoyed listening to your YouTube channels, your videos, because I feel that caringness that you have for your students. And I'm sure, if you had a society where we had thousands of you, then, we'll have greater generation of young people. It's been really interesting talking to you today. Thank you for coming onto the podcast. I hope many young people listening and they will be inspired for what potential they can have in the future. So thank you very much, Mr. T.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
I would like to end with a quote from civil rights campaigner Malcolm X. Education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. Thank you for listening to the Second Opinion podcast. Please like, subscribe if you enjoyed listening, and check out our other channels. See you next time.